Explained by the Billy Meier Contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Minotaur. Contact Report 559.
But because of the Taurus man, the Greek mythology comes to my mind, the legend of the Minotaur, the human being of the bull. At the time of Minos, the king on the island of Crete, he asked the sea god Poseidon for a particularly beautiful and powerful bull to sacrifice to him. Poseidon heard the request, created such a bull, and let it rise from the sea. King Minos, however, was so blinded by the beauty of the animal that he kept it for himself, but intended to slaughter another for the sea god. Poseidon, however, became angry and punished the king by casting a spell on Minos' wife for breaking the word, Queen Pasiphae. She fell in love with the bull, and commissioned the court artist Daedalus to build a wooden cow, which was hollow inside and covered with fur. When this was done, she climbed into the hollow cow to be mounted and mated with Poseidon's bull, because he liked the work of art and felt attracted to it. Then 9 months later, the queen gave birth to a child, a monster, half human being, half bull, the Minotaur. This animal-human child grew up and became big and strong, preferring to eat human beings. But to prevent this Minotaur from causing any harm, the king ordered his master builder Daedalus to build a labyrinth in which the monster was locked up and could not escape. To feed the Minotaur, King Minos had 7 boys and 7 girls kidnapped every 9 years from the city of Athens, which he had subjugated, and then had them taken to Crete and thrown to the monster. One of the young men was Theseus, a son of the sea god Poseidon and stepson of the king of Athens. But the daughter of King Minos, Ariadne, fell in love with him and helped him to kill the monster in the labyrinth. To help Theseus find his way out of the labyrinth, she gave him a wooden spool with a long thread wound around it, which he unwound as he entered the labyrinth and marked his path, which he followed and found on his way back out.
Contact Report 750.
Examples of this are, on the one hand, the incident in Hinwil when, in the presence of witnesses such as Jacobus and my ex, I gave myself a fresh shave and left the house around midnight, only to be on the road together with your daughter Simya Se for around a week in the past. But then, through a time manipulation, returned home 5 hours later after leaving the house at 5 ARs, with a week's beard sprouting on my face. Then,
this is familiar to me because you were in Crete together because you were interested in the mythological story about the Minotaur and wanted to know the truth about it.
Because at that time I wanted to get to the bottom of various stories from different mythologies in general, so also concerning the Minotaur, who is said to have been a human-eating monster, half human being, half bull. The Minotaur was a figure of Greek mythology, and a creature with a human body but a bull's head. According to Greek mythology and legend, King Minos ruled Crete at that time and was regarded and worshipped as the son of the god Zeus and the goddess Europa. Minos allegedly asked Poseidon, the sea god who is said to have been his uncle, for a miracle of help to become king of Crete, but also to prevent anyone else from becoming king. In doing so, Minos is said to have promised and sworn that he would sacrifice everything that emerged from the sea to the sea god for the rest of his life, including the mermaids who were already haunting the mythologies at that time, but who were in fact not human sea creatures, but seals, which people mistakenly considered to be human beings, because these mammals could easily be seen as human-like in the water. Poseidon, the saga goes, performed the miracle and Minos became king. In return for Minos becoming king, he was supposed to offer a sacrifice to the sea god, namely a magnificent bull which the latter sent to Minos, but which pleased the latter so much that he placed it in his own herd of cattle, only to sacrifice an inferior animal instead. Poseidon, however, is said to have become grim and pissed off and boundlessly furious at this, and exacted sea-divine revenge in such a way that he allegedly made Pasiphae, the wife of Minos, fall in love with the magnificent bull he sent to Minos as an offering. Pasiphae, the legend explains, as a result of her infatuation, then desired the sea divine bull in order to mate with it. And in order to be able to do this, she had Daedalus, a clever architect, inventor and technician, who according to the legend was a descendant of the god Hephaestus, build a wooden mating frame. Daedalus, alias as he is called in German, I must explain this in between, was, according to the legend, an extremely jealous man who, when his pupil invented the saw, killed him by throwing him to his death from a high roof. Afterwards, according to the legend, he fled to Crete so as not to have to answer to the court in his hometown of Athens. He also took his son Icarus with him on his flight. But now back to Pasiphae, the wife of King Minos, for whom Daedalus, according to the legend, built a wooden mating rack that was covered with a cow skin, and in which the woman could hide in such a way that she was mated by the bull, so that she lay down in the cow mating rack and was impregnated by the bull. So, according to the legend, she did it and was copulated by the bull, and then, at the correct time, she gave birth to a son from this union, who was half human being and half bull, or the Minotaur, a monster with the form of a human being and the head of a bull. When King Minos was confronted with all that had happened to his wife and the bull, Daedalus had to build a labyrinth without an exit, but he secretly considered and built one, of which the king was unaware. When the labyrinth was finished, the king had the monster imprisoned in the labyrinth, also forbidding Daedalus to leave the island. One day, when King Minos received news that his son Androgeos had been killed by the fault of King Aegeus of Athens, he waged a revenge campaign against Athens and defeated the Athenians, after which he imposed a vicious tribute on them, namely that every 9 years they had to bring 7 youths and 7 virgins to Crete in the Minotaur's labyrinth, where they were sent to the Minotaur's labyrinth and sacrificed to it. Eventually, however, the saga continues. The matter was brought to an end by Theseus, the son and later successor of Aegeus, taking part in the 3rd tribute himself, killing the monster Minotaur in the process. Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos, fell in love with him and helped him with her Ariadne's thread, which he laid out in the labyrinth and thus, with the help of the thread, found his way through the labyrinth in which the Minotaur lived. There are other versions of this, but I won't talk about them, only that the legend says Theseus defeated and killed the Minotaur, and found his way out of the labyrinth with the help of the thread laid out by Ariadne with the young men and maidens. But what prompted me to let myself be taken back to Minoan times was the reason for wanting to find out how, why, and from what the Minotaur legend arose. And this I was indeed able to find out, the reality being that the Minotaurus legend had only arisen almost 3 centuries after the death of King Minos, and was based on something that had nothing whatsoever to do with the belief in the sea god Poseidon. The effective fact was that, as your daughter Simya say, and I were no doubt able to learn and ascertain at the sites of the events of the time, Pasiphae, the wife of King Minos, was impregnated by him, and then gave birth to a son who was physically deformed, similar to the Elephant Man who lived in England in the last century. Like Joseph Carey Merrick, the so-called Elephant Man, the second son of King Minos and his wife Pasiphae, was also severely physically deformed and had a certain resemblance to a bull's head, as well as a completely disfigured figure and face. And as was the case then, and as is also the case today, the boy was disowned by his parents as a result of his already congenital physical deformity. At that time, disabled children were usually killed at birth, but Minotaur, as he was called, was not. This was because the king and his wife feared that the sea god had brought about the whole of the body deformation as a punishment because they had spread evil insults against him. Therefore, they were afraid that Poseidon would take new and even worse revenge on them if the son who had been deformed by his might were killed. So Minos and Pasiphae decided that a court servant, Aphaia or so her name was, should take care of the son and bring him up, far away in the vast countryside. Minotaur had a good intelligentum, was of a very peaceful nature, and had been astonishingly well educated by the court servant, so that one could converse with him through a translator. When he was grown up and also made aware of his origins by his governess, he tried to get to the court and demand his rights. But this led to the king and his wife reacting viciously, and consequently commissioning Daedalus to build a labyrinth, which was actually a huge cave, to imprison the physically deformed son in. However, always fearing the vengeance of Poseidon, they tried to appease the sea god by arranging for human sacrifices to be regularly offered in the labyrinth, but only youths of both sexes, who were first chosen from the population, stolen and killed as sacrifices, but later by Athens after war had been waged there and the Minoans had been victorious. What must ultimately be mentioned with regard to the whole matter is that, as a result of the sacrifice of young human beings to appease or calm the god Poseidon and out of fear of revenge, the lie arose that the imprisoned man called Minotaur, who had been cast out by his father and mother because of his deformed face, head, and body, was a human eater, which is why the human beings sacrificed to Poseidon would also serve him as food.